So usually when you're using a circular saw, watch out puppy, you can use one of these devices on your circular saw, and when attached to the circular saw will help guide you to ensure that you get a straight line. Unfortunately, with the width where I have to cut, it's not long enough. So I have to go to plan B, which is using clamps and a piece of wood to ensure that I get a straight line. So what I'm going to do is, first I want 107 centimeters, and I've marked a line all the way down. And something else I did was I wrote on it, cut line, because later on I'm going to have a line to show me where to line up my wood. Anyway, so this is my cut line, and I've marked it as such with a pencil. I don't care, I'm going to paint over this, mark all you want. Mark your measurements on it, on 107 centimeters. Great. So what I've done is I've started with the line that, excuse me. So first of all, I've started marking the line where I'm going to put my piece of wood to act as a guide for the side of the saw. This is unplugged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my original line, which is my cut line, and I'm going to peek under here, line up my blade where I'm going to cut to accommodate the 107, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm holding it square on the piece of wood. I'm going to use my square, measure it there, square, measure it there, it's square. Hey guys. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on the opposite side with a pencil. What this is doing is showing me that from the blade, which is going to cut, and the side of the shoe, it's called the shoe, this is called the shoe, I have this much distance. So I want that much distance on my board. So I'm going to turn off the camera now, and I'm going to mark this particular line all the way down the board, and then I'll show you how to line up your wood beam as a guide. Okay, so I've got the second line that I'm going to use as my guide to line up this board on just close to my cut line. And you may be wondering, well, why don't I put the guide board over here and cut from that direction? It would be much easier. Then the piece of wood would be falling away from me as opposed to in between me and the big chunk of wood. The reason is that I don't want these clamps here, because the clamps, which are quite heavy, you can get these at Home Ec. They're DCM brand, and they're $4.98 each. They're heavy. In addition to this long piece of wood, I don't want it falling down on the floor. So I'm going to cut from this way and on this side and go to that direction. So I take a longer piece of wood. You want a longer piece of wood than what you're going to cut to use as your clamp. And I'm going to line it up. First I'll eyeball it, that side. This side I want to make sure is precise. So remember, measure twice, cut once. Okay, I'll get that in as far as I can. Alright. And then tighten it up. I'm going to take a look underneath to make sure that this is level. That's level. Now I'm not concerned with the wood. So with this, this is an old piece of wood. I don't care if these happen to pinch it and mark it with a bit of an indentation. But under here, if I'm using a piece of wood that I do care about, then I would suggest that you use an extra piece of block wood to put under there, a long piece to put under there, so that your clamp underneath is going to go, is going to be pushing in and possibly indenting a piece of wood that you don't care about. So anyway, so I've got this in and it's clamped nice and tight. So we'll go to the other side. Line that up and clamp in edge position. And again, before I tighten it too much, I'm going to go underneath and make sure that this clamp is nice and level. Yeah, that's nice and tight. Now I'm going to move these out of my way. Okay, just so they're not sticking in my way. And I like that. It's nice and tight. I'm going to check. Nice Okay, so before I go any further, with the weight of the saw, which is going to be quite heavy, plus I'm going to be pushing down a bit on it, I'm using the two step stools as a sawhorse. So what I want to do is I want to put some counterweight down here because as you can see, this is movable. So I'm going to take some boards and I'm going to place them here, which will counterbalance any weight that the saw and myself may produce cutting on that line. Okay, so everything is set up and I'm ready to go. And again, this is temporarily unplugged. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a test run with it unplugged and not turned on, just to make sure that everything is going to be clear. I've got good clearance at the end, and I've got a forewarning as to how my cord is going to go. Let me move this back a smidge. Okay, so I'm going to be cutting here, and I don't want my cord trailing here. So at some point I'm going to have to wrap it around here while paying attention with this hand to the border. So I wrapped it around. I'm imagining that I'm doing a dry run. I'll pull you down here now. Now I get to the end and I've got to cut until here because my blade comes just here. So I have to make sure that I have clearance with this object in my way. Do I have clearance? Yeah, I just have clearance. Okay, I don't want to have this board be up here and then I get to the end and I can't cut anymore. So I'm just doing a trial run just to see if everything will go as planned. Now I'm going to plug it in and we're going to do the real cut. Please wear protective eyewear and make sure that pets are out of the way. Okay, so we'll make sure it's on. Yeah, we're good. And we're going to start to cut. I'm going to make sure the whole time I'm not going to be focusing on this line at all. I'm not going to be looking at this line. I don't care about this line. I care about the edge of the shoe being lined up with this border at all times. That's the only thing I'm going to pay attention to. Bobo, out you go, buddy. Out you go, dude. Thank you. Okay, that was very noisy and very dusty. Should have worn a mask for that. So this is a very thick piece of wood, and when I did hit a notch down there, it did hesitate for a bit. So there it's cut, and now what I'm going to do is remove my border that I used as a guide for the shoe of my saw, and I'm going to measure it again just to make sure that, yes, in fact, I do have what I need, which is 107 centimeters. Boy, is it dusty in here. Let's open up a window. Ah!